Hello, it's Sunday, October 20th, 2013. This is Gerald Clark in San Diego, California with my wife Krista. Tonight we're going to be doing a short dialogue on the Anunnaki of Nibiru, mankind's forgotten creators, enslavers, destroyers, saviors, and hidden architects of the New World Order, a book recently released on Amazon.com and a bestseller. This is my wife Krista. She is in a short introduction.
Hi, I'm Krista, and I'm going to be asking Gerald questions. And the first question is, what were the significant influences that shaped your research?
I've never told this story publicly, but I'm going to tell you now. When I was 14, I was living in the northwest corner of Arkansas on a small farm, a little 7-acre farm, and we were pretty remote, living on a dirt road. We were so far out that when the school bus dropped me off, I was the last one on the bus, and they turned the bus around at our property, so it was pretty remote. Anyway, one evening, it was about 5 p.m., the skies were very still, and I was out in the front yard. We had a large walnut tree, and I remember it was fall because I could see the walnuts up in the tree. They were pretty visible. And I was kicking a ball up into the tree, trying to knock them down. Because in the fall, when the walnuts are ready, you'd knock them down, put them in the driveway, and run over them to get the husks to break off so that you could get to the walnut itself. They're pretty tough. Anyway, while I was doing this, coming from the northern skies just across a field from where our property was, at about maybe 25, 30 feet off the ground, a small, probably Volkswagen-sized silvery disc that was completely silent, headed from north to south, right over our property, right over my driveway, which was probably within stone's throw from where I was standing in the front yard. And this really shocked me. I didn't know what to think of it. It was very low in the sky. Like I said, probably close enough I could have hit it with a rock. It was silent. It was moving less than 3 miles an hour and moving from north to south right over our driveway, right where the walnuts were that we'd been knocking out of the tree. And I was stunned by this, and I was frozen in the yard. And I watched it just continue to move north to south, right across where our driveway was, heading over our garden toward the woods in the back of our property. So I ran the house, got my mom, took her on the back porch, and she and I stood there together and looked up, and there it was, just right over our heads, heading very slowly, silently, not even making any disturbance whatsoever. And it proceeded at about maybe 40 feet off the ground, maximally 100 feet, and went down over the woods on the back side of our property and just started following the contour of the trees, heading almost directly south. And the only comment I remember saying to my mom was, well, that must have been some military aircraft that's heading down to Fort Chaffee, because I had never even heard of a UFO at that point in my life.
What an experience. At what point did you determine it was a UFO? And did it impact your research in writing your book?
Well, it wasn't until I got out of the military in 1989 that I'd actually ever even heard of a UFO, so I was pretty ignorant on the topic. Having been a helicopter pilot for 7 years, the idea of something moving through the sky that didn't require, or its propulsion system didn't make any noise or make any wind or anything, really stuck with me, and I thought a lot about that, and I discussed it with my mom. For years after, we would bring up the topic, hey, remember we were standing on the back porch and we'd watch this silver disc, blah, 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 go fly nap of the earth over the trees, and we'd say, oh, yeah, and pretty much forget about it. But it never really occurred to me that it could have had a significant influence on my research and the way I saw the world after having encountered such a thing. So from the time that I got out of the military in '89 to the time that I figured out what a UFO was, to the time that I started writing the book was later, and it started in 2002 probably. I started some reading early in 2000, but my serious research into the Anunnaki didn't really start until 2002. And that's when I probably was first exposed to Zecharia Sitchin's work, especially the 12th planet. The other book Zecharia Sitchin wrote that really caught my attention was Genesis Revisited. And when I was young in Arkansas, I was exposed to the Southern Baptist religion, and I was very much involved with it. I would say I was a disciple at having learned all the salvation doctrine. I'd read the Bible significantly, and and like most people, I wanted to know the truth about who our creators were and where we came from. It's a common story, a common thread across all cultures, and it affected me too, even though I was hidden away in the northwest corner of Arkansas. So in the Genesis Revisited story, especially Genesis 1:26, where the plurality of the creators was talked about, yet the whole Ten Commandments were clearly focused on a monotheistic deity who was called God. 4 of the commands, the very first ones, having to deal with the monotheistic sovereignty of that single deity, having no other God before me, and so on and so forth. So that was very interesting. So Zechariah's work in Genesis Revisited really spawned my research into the Nephilim or ancient astronaut theory as well, because I guess after having an experience as a teenager that I realized was very significant and after the fact, I guess it made Zecharia Sitchin's theory more believable to me.
I can imagine. Were there other authors besides Zechariah that influenced your research?
Yeah, some of the work done by Drumvalo Melchizedek, and I have to explain, I was looking into sacred geometry after being exposed to some of the New Age writing that I was exposed to. But anyway, Drumvalo's work seemed to have a lot of resonance with me because he appeared to have read all of Zecharia Sitchin's work as well, and he actually commented in one of his books, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, volume 1 or 2. I don't remember which one it was, but his take on Zechariah's work helped me get over the hurdle of could this be valid? Because Drumvalo's work was pretty technical, but it was pretty far out there too, and I resisted it much like I did Sitchin's work until I had a chance to try the hat on and corroborate it and think about it. It took years to correlate what Drumvalo had written and what Sitchin had written, and to try to make sense of the two, and between those two authors, it got me started.
How did doing business in Turkey influence your decision to write this book?
Well, while I was doing business in Turkey, I noticed that there was a lot of symbology on the mosque that was interesting. 3 orbs and a crescent moon. What did those mean? And in descending size. And Constantinople, or Istanbul, being the capital of the East Roman Empire, had so much history associated with it anyway. So while I was looking into finding out about Ataturk and how he left the Bursa Inigal area and went up to Constantinople to take back the area from the Christians that were set up by Rome, I started looking into what some of the symbology, especially related to the crescent moon, what it meant. And mostly it was in order that I could have a conversation with a client over there that was fluent in English, but he, and having gone to school in the United States, he was based in Turkey. And it just showed a little respect to learn a little bit about their culture and to show that I was somewhat interested. Well, in that quest, I got exposed to how old some of the stories were in Turkey that seemed to predate even Egypt. So this was a little confusing. And simultaneously, while I was traveling back there, I was reading the book Guns, Germs, and Steel that mentioned the obsidian trade capital of Catalhayuk that was purported to be anywhere from 9 to 12,000 years old. So I started looking up that city, looking into the symbology that were on the mosque there in Turkey, and one thing led to another, and I got interested in history, which I'd never been interested in before.
What a neat journey you've had in learning history. How did your experience in Turkey lead to discovering the Anunnaki?
While I was in Turkey, I had dinner with some clients in a town called Bursa. And while we were in that town, they took me to this restaurant that was located high up on this mountain that they also said was called Mount Olympus in their history. And one thing led to another, and while we were talking up there, I had discussions about the Hittites and Hattusa and some other topics that I'd heard about on the Discovery Channel that started to overlap with some of the deities that were mentioned by Sitchin and also in Mesopotamia. And one of them was Teshub, the storm god, and there were a couple others. One of them led me to Isker Adad, who turned out to be a son of Enlil. So there was some crossover in Turkey that kind of lured me in. And I guess the thing that really tied the two together was the research I was doing while I was reading The Guns, Germans, and Steel that led to Major Rowland's discovery of the Cliffs of Behistun in Persia, which I considered the Rosetta Stone of the 3 different languages that were represented there, that really led to kind of, I don't know, bring some merit to the Sumerian accounts that Sitchin had written about. So having done business in Turkey, finding out that it was really quite old, and also that it was connected to Mesopotamia through some of their gods and some of the history that took place there, including Noah's account on Mount Ararat, which was in southern Turkey. So the two kind of overlapped.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with all of us. And that concludes our interview for tonight. And we look forward to hearing more from you and your research later.